The air still tasted of copper and smoke. Ash coated everything like a grim, gray snow. Firefighters moved through the ruins of the house, their steps crunching on charred wood and debris. The flames were out now, just tendrils of smoke rising in the cold pre-dawn light. One wall still stood, blackened and skeletal against the bruised sky. It had been a bad one, fast and hot. Captain Roberts surveyed the scene, his face grimy, eyes tired. They had gotten the call late, the kind that screams danger before you even leave the station. Now it was just the grim aftermath, checking for hot spots, ensuring no one was left inside. The silence felt heavier than the wreckage. Then he saw it. Amidst the blackened timber and twisted metal near where the front door used to be, a patch of gold. A dog. A golden retriever, its fur singed in places, but it stood there, unwavering. It wasn't running. It wasn't hiding. It was simply there, a statue of fur and bone, against the destruction. Roberts walked closer, slow steps across the uneven ground. The dog watched him, its eyes steady, not scared, not aggressive, just watchful. It sat on a small mound of ash, a singular point of stillness in the chaos. The dog didn't move. It just watched him come closer, its chest rising and falling in the smoky air. The fire had taken everything. But this dog remained, rooted to the earth, a silent sentinel over the smoldering remains. It didn't make a sound, didn't wag its tail, didn't try to approach. It simply stayed. Captain Roberts crouched a few feet away. "Hey, boy," he said, his voice low and calm. The dog responded with a soft, rumbling growl, not a threat, more like a warning, "Stay back." Roberts didn't push. He had seen dogs spooked after fires, running miles away. This one was different. It was holding its ground. He offered a gloved hand slowly, palm up. The dog looked at the hand, then back at Roberts' face. The growl didn't stop. It was quiet but firm. Firefighter Miller approached from behind. "What is it, Cap?" "Got a dog here," Roberts said. "Won't budge." Miller tried whistling softly. The dog ignored him. It didn't even turn its head. Its focus was absolute, fixed on the small area it occupied. Roberts noticed the dog was sitting on a raised section of ash, almost like a low hill. It guarded the spot with an intensity that went beyond fear. They tried setting down a bowl of water. The dog looked at it for a moment, then back at its spot. It didn't drink. They offered a piece of jerky from a ration pack. The dog sniffed the air but made no move to take it. It refused. Everything food, water, comfort, coaxing. Its mission, whatever it was, superseded basic needs. Roberts watched the dog, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. Animals usually fled fire, fled destruction. This dog stayed. It stayed and it guarded. What was under that spot of ash? What was holding it there with such silent, fierce loyalty? The growl persisted, a low vibration in the smoky quiet. Captain Roberts signaled Miller and the others to keep their distance. The dog was communicating something, not just fear. It was telling them this spot matters. Roberts looked at the small mound of ash where the dog sat. It wasn't just random debris. There was a shape beneath, hard lines visible under the fine powder, something solid. He took a step closer. The growl deepened slightly. He stopped. The dog held its ground. Roberts didn't want to force it, didn't want to cause more stress. He respected the dog's boundary, the strange, silent power it held in this ruined place. He knelt down, carefully, slowly. He kept his eyes on the dog. The dog watched him, the low growl a constant thread. Using a gloved hand, Roberts began to gently sift through the ash a few feet away from the dog's immediate spot, working his way closer, testing the dog's patience. He cleared away loose soot and small pieces of charred wood. His hand brushed against something hard, curved metal. He dug a little more. It felt like a handle. Then he heard it. A faint sound, barely audible above the crackling of cooling embers and the distant sirens. It was a high-pitched sound. A whimper, a weak, muffled cry. Roberts froze. The dog's growl stopped. It lifted its head, looking at the spot where Roberts was digging. Every firefighter nearby stopped what they were doing. All eyes turned to Roberts, then to the dog, then to the small area being uncovered. The whimper came again, a fragile sound of life in the dead silence. Captain Roberts ripped off his glove and began digging faster with his bare hands. The ash was still warm, but his fingers didn't register the heat. The faint cry urged him on. The dog stood up, moving just an inch or two away from the immediate spot, watching intently. It didn't growl anymore. It seemed to understand. He cleared away more debris, revealing a curved, scorched metal object. It looked like a laundry basket, a heavy-duty one, the kind made of thick wire or mesh. It was dented, blackened, but intact. Roberts pulled it out from the ash, his movements quick and careful now. Inside the basket, nestled amongst smoke-stained towels, was a baby, small still, covered in soot. Its face was smudged, its tiny fists clenched. It was wrapped in a towel that had somehow escaped the worst of the flames, offering a thin layer of protection. The whimper had come from this small body. Silence fell over the scene, broken only by the baby's weak cries. The firefighters stood frozen, staring at the impossible sight. A baby, pulled from the heart of a fire that had consumed everything else. The baby was alive, barely perhaps, but alive. Roberts held the basket carefully, looking down at the tiny face, then up at the golden retriever who had guarded this spot through the inferno. The dog sat back down, its head resting on its paws, its eyes fixed on the basket. It had done its job. It had waited. It had protected. And now, life had been found in the ashes. "Emps!" Captain Roberts shouted, his voice hoarse with disbelief. He cradled the scorched basket gently. Medics who had been standing by rushed forward, their faces tightening with shock as they saw the small bundle within. One of them carefully lifted the baby from the basket, unwrapping the smoke-stained towel. The baby was tiny, its breathing shallow, skin marked by soot and heat. They worked quickly, checking vitals, administering oxygen. A small mask covered the baby's face. The scene shifted from the grim stillness of the fire aftermath to the urgent, focused chaos of a medical emergency. The baby was the sole focus now. Life was fighting against death in this quiet, fragile body. As the imps secured the baby on a stretcher and prepared to move, one of the firefighters finally managed to coax the golden retriever away. He used a gentle hand on the dog's back, speaking softly. "Okay, boy. They've got her now. It's okay." The dog hesitated for a moment, looking at the stretcher, then back at the empty spot where the basket had been. It let the firefighter guide it slowly away from the immediate area. The resistance was gone. Its job was done. The dog followed quietly as the stretcher was wheeled away, its eyes tracking the small bundle until it disappeared into the back of the waiting ambulance. The ambulance lights flashed silently against the gray morning sky. The golden retriever stood beside the firefighter, watching until the vehicle was gone. The loyalty that had kept it rooted to the earth through fire now manifested as a silent vigil at the edge of the scene, its duty fulfilled, its watch ended for now. The siren wailed, a desperate cry slicing through the morning air. Inside the ambulance, the EMTs worked frantically. The baby's condition was critical. Burns were visible, angry red patches on delicate skin. Smoke inhalation had ravaged tiny lungs. Dehydration was severe. Every second mattered. Paramedic Sarah leaned over the child, her brow furrowed with concentration. She monitored the breathing, adjusted the oxygen, checked the faint pulse. BP dropping. She called out to her partner, Mark, who was navigating the siren-filled streets. Mark pushed the ambulance faster, weaving through the sparse early morning traffic. He knew the route to County General blindfolded, but today felt different. There was a life hanging in the balance, a life that had survived something impossible, thanks to a dog. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Sarah started administering fluids intravenously, searching for a tiny vein. "Come on, little one," she murmured, her voice tight. She performed CPR, shallow compressions on the fragile chest. The rhythm of her hands was the only steady sound inside the rushing vehicle, punctuated by the baby's weak gasps and the persistent wail of the siren. The race against time was urgent, silent, and absolute. They fought for every breath, every heartbeat, every second that brought them closer to the hospital doors. They were carrying a miracle from the ashes, clinging to hope with every mile they sped forward. At County General, chaos yielded to the sterile, hushed intensity of the emergency room. Doctors and nurses swarmed the ambulance as it pulled up. The baby was whisked away immediately, a tiny form surrounded by a flurry of medical professionals. Meanwhile, the golden retriever arrived, brought by the same firefighter who had gently guided him away from the fire scene. The dog, still smudged with soot, paced the waiting room. He didn't whine or bark. He just walked back and forth, his gaze fixed on the double doors the baby had disappeared through. He ignored the confused looks from staff and the few early visitors. His mission hadn't ended when the baby left the fire. A charge nurse, a woman with kind eyes named Maria, watched the dog. She saw the anxiety in his pace steps, the way he wouldn't settle, his unwavering focus. She knelt down, speaking softly. "Hey boy, you looking for the baby?" The dog stopped pacing and looked at her, a soft whine escaping his chest. Maria made a decision. She knew dogs weren't usually allowed beyond the waiting area, but this wasn't usual. This dog was different. "He needs to be near," she told a security guard who approached cautiously. He saved her. She arranged for a quiet corner near the pediatric ward entrance, far from patients but close enough for the dog to feel nearby. The golden retriever finally lay down on the cool linoleum floor, his head resting on his paws, eyes still fixed on the doors. He wouldn't sleep. He wouldn't rest. He was waiting. His silent vigil had simply moved locations. He was still the guardian, even in the sterile quiet of the hospital. Behind the double doors, a team of specialists worked tirelessly. Dr. Ramirez, a pediatrician with years of experience, led the effort. The baby was small, fragile, but alive. That was the miracle. Now came the fight. They assessed the burns, carefully cleaned and dressed them. They monitored the baby's breathing, suctioning tiny airways, adjusting oxygen levels. They administered fluids and medication to combat dehydration and potential infection. The room was filled with the quiet beeping of machines, the soft rustle of gowns, the low, focused voices of the medical team. Each movement was precise, deliberate, aimed at coaxing life back into the small body. Hours blurred into a tense, focused effort. Outside, the sun had risen fully. The golden retriever still lay by the door, a silent, patient presence. Inside, the fight continued. There were small victories. The baby's heart rate stabilized slightly. A shallow cough cleared an airway. Vitals flickered between critical and stable. It was a slow, agonizing process, touch and go. Every breath felt earned. Dr. Ramirez wiped sweat from her brow. They had done everything they could for now. It was up to the baby's own strength. She looked at the small chest rising and falling under the sheet, a fragile, persistent rhythm. The survival against such odds was astounding. She thought of the dog in the waiting room, the strange story the firefighters had told. A dog's loyalty, a baby's fight. She left the room for a moment, needing air, needing a break from the intensity. As she passed the waiting area, she saw the golden retriever still lying there, watching the doors. Its stillness was a mirror of the hope they all clung to inside. As the medical team worked to stabilize the baby, another puzzle began. Who was this child? Police were notified. Hospital social workers started making calls. They checked local missing persons reports. They checked regional databases. Nothing matched. No baby reported missing matched the description or the circumstances. The house had burned completely. Any records inside would be ash. There were no immediate neighbors who seemed to know the occupants well enough to identify a baby. It was as if this child had appeared from nowhere, delivered by fire and guarded by a silent dog. Officer Davies was assigned the case. He stood in the hospital hallway talking to Nurse Maria. "No ID on the baby?" he asked. "None," she confirmed, her voice soft. "And no one has come forward. It's baffling. How could a baby be in a house fire and no one report them missing?" Davies looked towards the waiting area where the golden retriever still lay. "What about the dog? Any way to ID him?" "The firefighters said he looked like a golden retriever," Maria said. "Very well behaved, considering, just focused." Davies decided to check if the dog had a microchip. It was a long shot, but sometimes pets were registered. He requested a handheld scanner from the vet clinic the hospital sometimes worked with for animal-related incidents. Maybe the dog, the silent guardian, held the only clue to the baby's identity. The mystery was a heavy weight in the quiet hospital corridors. A baby with no name, saved by a dog with no owner present. It didn't make sense. But then nothing about this story did. It was a story written in ash and silence and fierce, unexpected loyalty. Officer Davies arrived back at the hospital waiting area with the microchip scanner. The golden retriever lifted his head as Davies approached but remained still. The dog didn't seem afraid of the unfamiliar device. It seemed more curious, perhaps even hopeful. Davies knelt slowly beside the dog. "Hey, boy," he murmured. He ran the small scanner over the dog's neck and shoulders. It beeped. A small number appeared on the screen. "Got something," he said. He connected the scanner to a small handheld reader. The number linked to a database entry. A name appeared, Bailey. Below the name was a breed, golden retriever, and an owner's name, Alina Morris. An address was listed. It was the address of the house that had burned down. Davies felt a jolt. Alina Morris, the likely occupant of the house. And this dog, Bailey, belonged to her. And Bailey had been found guarding a baby in the ruins of her home. A picture was attached to the registration. It showed a woman with long, dark hair smiling, her arm around a golden retriever that looked exactly like the one lying on the hospital floor. Davies looked at Bailey. "Is that you, boy?" he asked softly. Bailey responded with a quiet thump of his tail against the floor. The mystery wasn't solved, but a crucial piece had fallen into place. The baby belonged to Alina Morris, and Bailey belonged to her too. But where was Alina? And how did the baby end up in that basket in the ash, guarded by her dog? The questions multiplied, but now there was a name, Alina Morris, and a potential connection. Armed with the name Alina Morris, investigators returned to the fire scene. The site was still cordoned off, a stark reminder of the destruction. Forensic investigators worked carefully, sifting through the debris, looking for clues about the fire's origin and what might have happened in the final moments. Officer Davies walked with them, the story of the dog and the baby heavy on his mind. He pointed out the spot where Bailey had been sitting, where the basket had been found. The investigators examined the area closely. They found remnants of wiring near the origin point of the fire, suggesting an electrical cause was likely. It didn't look like arson. It looked like a terrible accident. As they continued to sift, they found items suggesting someone had been preparing to leave or had been trying to gather things quickly. A partially packed bag scattered clothing. And near the area where the baby was found, they discovered something else. A small, charred piece of fabric that looked like a blanket, and signs that furniture had been moved, perhaps in an attempt to shield an area from the heat and flames. It wasn't just random placement. It looked deliberate. Someone had placed the baby there. Someone had tried to protect the baby. And the most likely person was Alina Morris, the owner of the dog, the occupant of the house. The evidence suggested a desperate, last-minute attempt to save the child. Alina must have known the fire was happening. She must have somehow gotten the baby into the basket, found a spot that offered some minimal protection, and then, tried to escape. Been overcome by smoke. The timeline was becoming clearer, painted in the sad details of the ruins. A sudden fire, a mother's desperate act, a dog's unwavering loyalty. But where was the mother now? Bailey was taken to a local veterinary clinic. The vet examined him carefully. He had some minor burns on his paws and flanks and was dehydrated, but overall, he was in remarkably good health considering what he had been through. It was a testament to his resilience, or perhaps his sheer determination. The vet treated his burns, gave him fluids, and kept him for observation. Even at the clinic, Bailey remained quiet and watchful. He ate and drank slowly, but his attention seemed elsewhere. His loyalty, it seemed, wasn't confined to a single location. Officer Davies visited Bailey at the clinic. He wanted to see the dog again, the animal who had been the key to everything. Davies spoke softly to Bailey, scratching him behind the ears. "Good boy," he said. He showed Bailey the photo from Alina Morris's microchip registration, the picture of her with the dog. Bailey's reaction was immediate and strong. He lifted his head, sniffed the photo intently, and let out a soft whine, a sound of recognition and longing. He nudged the photo with his nose. It wasn't just any photo. It was his person. It was Alina. His behavior confirmed the link, solidified the story. This was Alina Morris's dog, Bailey, and he was desperately missing her. The vet and the staff watched, moved by the dog's clear emotional response. Bailey wasn't just a survivor of the fire. He was a being with deep connections, a bond that transcended the physical destruction of his home. He was burned, yes, but his spirit, his loyalty, remained unbroken, and his focus was clearly on the woman in the picture. Where was she? With Bailey identified and linked to the fire, the focus of the investigation shifted urgently to finding Alina Morris. She was the baby's mother. She was the owner of the loyal dog. She was missing. Police expanded their search area. They checked local hospitals, thinking she might have escaped and collapsed somewhere, suffering from smoke inhalation or burns. They contacted shelters and transient services, although the initial assessment of the fire scene suggested she was a resident, not someone passing through. They searched nearby parks and areas she might have fled to in disorientation. The fear was that she hadn't made it out, that she had been overcome by the fire after placing the baby in the basket. But there was no body found in the house. That offered a sliver of hope. Maybe she had gotten out, disoriented, injured, and was wandering somewhere, unable to call for help. Officer Davies coordinated the search efforts. He kept thinking about Bailey's reaction to the photo. The dog's longing seemed to confirm Alina was still out there somewhere. Animals could sense things, could hold onto hope differently than humans sometimes. The search included walking trails and wooded areas surrounding the town, places someone fleeing might instinctively head, especially in the dark and confusion of a fire. Every hour that passed without finding her tightened the knot of worry. The baby was fighting for life in the hospital. Bailey was waiting. But the woman who connected them, the woman who had performed that final, desperate act of a mother, was still missing. Finding her became the absolute priority. Days passed. The search for Alina Morris continued, widening further. The hospital staff watched over the baby, who was slowly, painstakingly, showing signs of recovery. Bailey remained at the vet clinic, a quiet, watchful presence, his eyes still holding that look of waiting. Officer Davies received a call. It was from a park ranger who patrolled the large nature reserve on the edge of town. "Officer," the ranger said, "I think I might have seen someone matching your description." "Go on," Davies urged, his heart picking up pace. "Yesterday evening," the ranger said, "I was near the old railway bridge on the walking trail loop. Saw a woman. Looked rough, disoriented, like she was stumbling, had some visible burns on her arms." "Did you approach her?" Davies asked. "Tried to," the ranger replied. "But she seemed spooked. Didn't respond when I called out. Just kept moving, heading deeper into the woods near the bridge. Didn't get a good look at her face, but the burns, it stuck with me. Heard about the fire on the news, the missing woman, thought I should call." A woman with burns, disoriented, near a bridge on a walking trail, it fit. It had to be Alina. She had made it out. Disoriented by smoke, injured by flames, she had fled into the familiar dark safety of the woods. Rescue teams were immediately assembled. They focused on the area the ranger had described, near the old railway bridge and the surrounding trails. The search was on again with renewed urgency and a specific location. Finding her alive after everything felt like a second miracle. The woods were vast, but now they had a starting point. Hope flickered, fragile but persistent, like the baby's heartbeat. The search teams moved through the dense woods near the old railway bridge. They called out Alina Morris's name. They spread out, combing the trails and the undergrowth. Officer Davies was with one of the teams, his eyes scanning the trees, the ground. The air was cool under the canopy. The sounds of the search echoed in the quiet. They searched for hours. Just as daylight began to fade, one of the team members shouted, "Over here, under the bridge." Davies and the others scrambled down the embankment towards the dark space beneath the crumbling concrete structure. Lying huddled against a damp concrete support was a woman. She was dirty, her clothes torn, her arms and face showing signs of severe burns, crusted and raw. It was Alina. She was unconscious, breathing shallowly. They carefully checked her vitals, administered first aid for her injuries. As they gently prepared her for transport, her eyes fluttered open. They were weak, unfocused, but there was a spark of awareness. She looked up at the faces above her, then her lips parted slightly. Her voice was a thin, raspy whisper, barely audible, just two small words. "Is my baby safe?" Davies knelt closer, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes," he said, "your baby is safe. The dog, Bailey, he stayed with her. He saved her." A flicker of relief crossed Alina's face before her eyes closed again and she drifted back into unconsciousness. But she was alive, and she had confirmation. Her baby was safe. The dog had stayed. It was the reunion of hope found in the cold, damp space under a bridge. The mother had survived the fire, survived days lost in the woods, driven by a single, desperate question. Now she had the answer, and the long journey of healing for both mother and child could begin. Alina was rushed to the hospital, the same hospital where her baby was fighting for life. She was immediately taken into the burn unit. Her injuries were serious, requiring immediate and extensive care. It took days for her to stabilize, days where she drifted in and out of consciousness. When she finally regained full awareness, weak but present, Officer Davies was there, along with a social worker. They needed to understand what had happened. Slowly, painfully, Alina recounted the night of the fire. She had been asleep, woke up to the smell of smoke, the sound of the smoke detector screaming. The house was already filling with thick, black smoke. Panic seized her, but instinct took over. Her baby was in the crib in the next room. She grabbed the baby, the heat already intense. She knew she couldn't carry the baby and navigate the smoke-filled house and unlock the complex back door latch with her hands full and visibility zero. She remembered the heavy laundry basket in the hallway, the kind that offered some protection. In a desperate, split-second decision, she placed the baby in the basket. She remembered seeing Bailey, her golden retriever, standing by her, agitated but steady. "Stay with him, Bailey." She had gasped, her voice raw with smoke. "Stay with the baby." She knew he wouldn't leave her side otherwise. She needed him focused on the baby. Then she had tried to find a way out for herself, crawling low, but the smoke had overcome her near the back door. She must have stumbled outside before losing consciousness, disoriented, running blindly into the dark woods. Her last conscious thought was of the baby, alone in the smoke, and Bailey. She had trusted her dog. She had begged him to stay, and he had. As Alina finished her story, the hospital staff and Officer Davies were left in stunned silence. Bailey hadn't just been a loyal pet who happened to be in the house. He had been given a direct command. He had been entrusted with the most precious life, and he had obeyed. He had stayed through the fire. He had endured the heat, the smoke, the terror, simply because his person had told him to stay with the baby. He hadn't fled when the roof collapsed. He hadn't run when the walls fell. He had sat on that spot, a small island of loyalty in a sea of destruction, guarding the basket, guarding the child, just as he had been told. His growl at the firefighters wasn't aggression. It was the completion of his duty, a signal that his post was occupied and protected. The sheer depth of his loyalty, the understanding and execution of that desperate command, left everyone in awe. It wasn't just instinct. It felt like something more profound. A bond forged in trust and love, tested and proven in the most horrific circumstances. Bailey, the golden retriever, wasn't just a dog. He was a hero, a lifesaver. His quiet presence at the hospital, his refusal to leave the waiting area near the pediatric ward, suddenly made perfect, heartbreaking sense. He was still on duty. He was still waiting for his family. He had saved the baby. And in telling her story, Alina had confirmed the incredible truth of what Bailey had done. The silent loyalty of one animal had defied fire and fate. Weeks turned into months. The baby, whose name was Leo, grew stronger day by day. The burns healed, the tiny lungs recovered. He was a miracle, a symbol of survival. Elena underwent multiple surgeries and painful treatments for her burns. Her recovery was slow, a long and difficult road, but she was determined. She visited Leo whenever she was strong enough, reaching out a bandaged hand to touch his tiny fingers. Bailey, after his stay at the vet, became a fixture at the hospital. With special permission, he was allowed to visit the pediatric ward, his calm presence a balm to the children and staff alike. He would lay quietly by Leo's crib, a warm, golden presence, just as he had in the ash. Staff would pet him gently as they passed, whispering, "Good boy, Bailey." He received treats and affection, his quiet vigilance earning him a place in everyone's hearts. He seemed to understand the healing process, the slow journey back to health. He would nudge Elena's hand gently when she was in pain, rest his head on her bed, a silent source of comfort. He watched over Leo with the same steadfast gaze he had shown in the ruins. The bond between dog, baby, and mother deepened in the sterile environment of the hospital, a quiet counterpoint to the medical procedures and therapies. They were a unit, bound together by fire and loyalty. Their recovery wasn't just physical. It was the slow, gentle healing of trauma, piece by piece, touch by touch, silent moment by silent moment. The story of the fire, the baby found in the ash, and the heroic golden retriever spread quickly. It went viral online, featured on national news. People were captivated by the tale of impossible survival and steadfast animal loyalty. The sheer grit of the baby, the mother's desperate act, and Bailey's unwavering vigil struck a chord with people everywhere. Donations started pouring in, not just for medical bills, which were extensive, but for Elena and Leo to rebuild their lives. Money, clothes, furniture, toys, it arrived in waves, a tangible outpouring of support from strangers touched by the story. Local contractors volunteered to help clear the fire scene and begin the process of rebuilding a house. Neighbors who hadn't known Elena well stepped up to offer help, meals, transportation. The community rallied around the small, unexpected family forged in tragedy. They saw in Bailey's courage, in Elena's strength, and in Leo's survival a powerful message of hope and resilience. The public awe wasn't just about the dramatic rescue. It was about the quiet, profound loyalty that made it possible. The focus remained tightly on Elena, Leo, and Bailey. The community support amplified their story, providing the practical means for them to start anew. But it never overwhelmed the intimate core of their bond. They were the center, and the world simply gathered around to offer warmth and help them rise from the ashes. Months passed. Elena's burns healed, leaving scars that were a testament to her survival. Leo was a healthy, smiling baby, showing no lasting effects from his ordeal. Bailey remained by their side, a constant, comforting presence. The day finally came for Elena and Leo to leave the hospital. Elena was weak but stood tall, dressed in borrowed clothes, holding her healthy baby boy in her arms. Bailey walked proudly beside them, his tail giving a soft, steady thump against her leg. Hospital staff gathered in the lobby, offering quiet cheers and soft applause. Many reached out to stroke Bailey's golden fur one last time. They didn't have a home to go back to yet, but temporary housing had been arranged by the community. A new house was already beginning to rise from the ashes of the old one, built with care and generosity. It was the beginning of a new chapter, marked not by fanfare but by quiet steps forward. As they walked out into the sunlight, the scent of clean air a contrast to the hospital smell, Elena stopped for a moment. She looked down at the top of Leo's head, nestled against her shoulder. Then she looked at Bailey, who sat patiently at her feet, looking up at her with those steady, golden eyes. She knelt down slowly, her movements still a little stiff. She wrapped her arms around Bailey's neck, burying her face in his warm fur. He nudged her gently, a soft whine escaping him. It wasn't a loud moment, not dramatic. It was quiet, profound. "You didn't just save him," Alina whispered into his fur, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved me too. You waited, you stayed, you gave me hope." Bailey just leaned into her embrace, a solid, warm weight. He didn't need words. His presence, his silent loyalty, said everything. They walked out together, a small, inseparable unit, leaving the hospital behind, stepping into the quiet promise of a new life, built on the ashes, guarded by love.